Bella Harlow pressed her palms against the cool limestone edge of the infinity pool as she lifted herself out of the water moonlight, clinging to her skin like a whispered secret. The ocean stretched beyond the glass barrier of the cliffside Montauk mansion, dark and endless and quiet in a way New York City never was. Waves rolled against the rocks far below their rhythm, soft and hypnotic, almost enough to calm the chaos inside her chest. The leadership retreat had drained every ounce of energy she had, and the pressure of spending an entire weekend around executives who made her feel both invisible and scrutinized had tied her nerves into knots. She had slipped out of the villa while the others drank wine on the terrace, craving air that was not steeped in judgment and expectation. The pool area was deserted, the lights dimmed to a soft blue glow that made the entire place look unreal, like something out of a dream she did not belong in. Still, she let herself believe she deserved at least one moment of peace. Only one. She glanced around again, making sure the camera at the far corner of the patio had its green light off exactly as the security guard had told her earlier. The system was on privacy mode for executives, which meant no live feed unless manually activated. And the only people with access were already asleep or too intoxicated to move. The idea of being fully alone felt like a gift. Bella inhaled deeply, the scent of salt and citrus mixing in the warm night air, and for the first time in months, she let herself loosen her grip on fear. She slid the straps of her swimsuit down her shoulders, hesitating only a second. Then she let it fall to the stone deck beside her. She stepped into the water naked, the shock of cold hitting her spine, before melting into a strange, liberating warmth. She drifted through the pool in slow strokes, letting the tension unravel from her muscles, letting the moon paint her in silver. For 15 precious minutes, she forgot everything. She forgot the way people looked at her during meetings, as if she did not belong in the same room. She forgot the email from her landlord about the rent increase. She forgot the moment earlier that day when Aiden Hawthorne had questioned her campaign proposal so sharply that half the room had winced. She forgot how his eyes had lingered on her afterward in a way that confused her more than his criticism ever could. She floated on her back, staring up at the sky, imagining what life would be like if she were someone else. Someone who fit into this world of power and privilege without needing to prove herself every minute. Someone who was not terrified of disappointing the one person whose approval somehow mattered more than it should. She finally swam back to the edge and lifted herself out again, water cascading down her body in silver ribbons. For the first time since she had been hired at Hawthorne Innovations, she felt weightless, safe, alone. She reached for the towel she had left on the chair, wiping water from her face before shaking out her hair. Then she froze. Someone was standing at the glass entrance of the pool pavilion. A man, tall, broad-shouldered, motionless. For a full heartbeat, Bella could not breathe. Then the overhead lights caught his face. Not a stranger, Aiden Hawthorne, her billionaire CEO, her excruciatingly intimidating boss. The man she had spent 6 months trying desperately not to think about outside of work. He stood rooted to the spot like something had punched the air out of him. His eyes were wide stunned, as if reality had shifted under his feet. Bella gasped and instinctively grabbed the towel, pressing it against her chest as heat flooded every inch of her. A strangled sound escaped her throat, half shock and half humiliation. Aiden jerked as if waking from a trance, and spun halfway away from her, one hand bracing on the glass wall, as if he needed it to keep standing. His voice broke when he spoke. "Bella, I did not know anyone was here. I thought the pool was empty. I swear I was only coming to check the lights." She clutched the towel tighter, her heart pounding so violently she could hear it louder than the ocean. Every nightmare scenario she had ever imagined about embarrassing herself at work condensed into this single impossible moment. She tried to steady her breath, but everything inside her trembled. "Please do not look at me," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I am not," Aiden said sharply. "I am not looking." But he did not move. His posture was rigid, his jaw tight, and even from several feet away, she could feel the war inside him. Respect versus instinct. Restraint versus something raw he could not hide. And in that suspended breath of time, Bella realized she was not frightened of him. She was frightened of what his eyes had revealed before he turned away. Something unguarded, something that had no place between a CEO and an employee, something that could ruin them both before the weekend even ended. Bella Harlow had never truly belonged anywhere, and she had known that long before she first stepped through the glass doors of Hawthorne Innovation. She came from a cramped walk-up apartment in Queens, where the radiators rattled in winter and summers smelled like asphalt and street food. A place held together not by wealth or luck, but by the relentless grit of her mother, who had immigrated to the United States with a baby on her hip and no one to help her except the city bus map taped to her refrigerator. Her father had driven a yellow taxi until the day he simply stopped coming home, leaving behind a worn Mets cap and a handful of unanswered questions. Bella had grown up dreaming of stability, of walking into a building where people listened when she spoke, of earning a salary that did not vanish the moment it arrived. She learned early that talent was her currency and hard work her only inheritance. While other kids in high school went to parties or spent weekends at the mall, Bella was designing logos for neighborhood stores and tutoring kids in algebra for $20 an hour. She had a gift for visual storytelling, a way of turning ideas into images that made people look twice a spark, that earned her a partial scholarship to a small design college in Manhattan. Everything she had, she fought for. Nothing came easily. And because of that, she carried a quiet fear that everything she had built could disappear with a single mistake. Hawthorne Innovations had not been part of her plan. She had applied for an internship on a dare from her roommate, fully expecting to be ignored. Instead, she received an interview request, then a second, then a third. The moment she stepped into the headquarters for the final round, she felt the distance between her world and theirs. Marble floors, glass walls. People who walked with the confidence of having generations of safety nets beneath them. Her hands trembled as she waited in the lobby, but she steadied herself and reminded her reflection in the elevator door that she had earned that moment. The final interview had been unexpected. She thought she would meet with someone from the creative department, but instead she was told she would present her portfolio to the CEO himself, Aiden Hawthorne, the prodigy who had turned a dorm room software idea into a multi-billion-dollar empire by the time he was 26. The man whose face appeared on magazine covers beside headlines, predicting he would become one of the most powerful figures in American business. She had expected someone arrogant, someone untouchable, someone who would barely look at her before dismissing her. Instead, he studied her work with an intensity that left her heart racing. when she challenged one of his assumptions about brand identity. She had seen a flicker of surprise in his eyes, then something sharper, almost intrigued. He ended the meeting with a single sentence. "You think differently. I like that." She left the building, convinced she had ruined everything by being too bold. She received her offer letter 3 days later. Working under Aiden should have been impossible. He moved through the world with the precision of someone who had built himself to withstand scrutiny, someone who had learned early that vulnerability was a liability and affection a risk he could not afford. His father had been the opposite: charming, reckless, addicted to power. The scandal that tore the Hawthorne family apart had been splashed across every business magazine for months, a corporate affair gone public, investors fleeing, lawsuits piling up. Aiden had inherited a company on the brink of collapse and rebuilt it with an iron hand, a sharp mind, and a vow that he would never repeat his father's mistakes, especially not with an employee, especially not with someone like Bella. Yet from the first week, she felt his eyes on her during presentations, not in a predatory way, but in a way that made her feel seen, as if he were assessing every spark of thought that crossed her mind. She assumed he was judging her, waiting for her to fail. She did not know that Aiden had noticed her long before that interview. He remembered her correcting a senior manager in the hallway about a data point during a briefing, remembered the way she apologized afterward, yet stood her ground. He remembered thinking she did not know how rare that combination was: humility without submission, confidence without arrogance. He also remembered telling himself to forget her, but he could not. Over 6 months, their interactions formed a strange pattern, a dance neither acknowledged but both felt. She would pitch an idea, and he would challenge it, but sometimes the challenge felt like an invitation to go deeper, to prove herself not to the room, but to him. She would catch him watching her in moments when she was not speaking, as if studying the way her mind worked. Once, after a late meeting, she left the office to find him waiting by the elevator. They stood in silence for a moment, and when the doors opened, he stepped back. "You first," he said softly. It was nothing, it was everything. Another time, she ran into him in the lobby during a rainstorm. She did not have an umbrella. Without hesitation, he handed her his. She tried to refuse, but he shook his head once. "I hate seeing talent get sick." It was meant to be casual. Her heart did not get the message. Still, they avoided anything personal. He never touched her. She never lingered near him. Reticence became a protective shield, until the day he raised his voice at her in a strategy session. He was not wrong. She had overlooked a key demographic, but the way he said it cut deeper than criticism should have. She saw regret flicker through his expression and wondered why disappointment seemed to hurt him too. They had avoided each other during the first hours of the retreat, careful to maintain distance under the watchful eyes of vice presidents and department heads. Bella thought she had imagined every moment between them, every spark, every almost. She did not know that Aiden had spent those same hours convincing himself she was simply another talented employee, someone whose presence should not matter, someone he was not allowed to think about, someone he had nearly convinced himself he could forget, until he walked into the pool pavilion that night and saw her rising out of the water, moonlit and unguarded and breathtaking in a way that demolished every wall he had ever built. Bella woke the next morning with the unmistakable weight of humiliation pressing against her ribs, like something sharp lodged beneath her skin. She had barely slept, jolting awake every hour with images of moonlight rippling water, and Aidan Hawthorne standing frozen at the edge of the pool pavilion while she stood naked in front of him. By sunrise, she had convinced herself of one thing. She needed to avoid him at all costs, preferably for the rest of her life. But leadership retreats did not leave much room for escape. By the time she walked into the breakfast room, dressed in a crisp cream blouse and a navy skirt, she hoped made her look older and more composed than she felt. The long table was already half full. Executives chatted over croissants and espresso. The ocean shimmered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, deceptively serene. Then she saw him. Aidan sat at the head of the table posture, perfectly straight expression, unreadable as if last night had never happened. His shirt sleeves were rolled to his elbows, and his hair was slightly mussed, as though he had dragged a hand through it more than once. The only sign that anything was wrong was the faint tremor in his right hand when he lifted his coffee cup. But no one seemed to notice except her. Their eyes met for half a second before he looked away too quickly, as if the sight of her burned. Bella's stomach twisted. She took a seat near the middle of the table, intentionally far from him. She kept her gaze fixed on her plate, but she felt him, felt the tension radiating across the room like a taut electric wire stretched between them. Genevieve Clark, the vice president of PR, noticed it first. Genevieve was impeccably dressed in a tailored ivory pantsuit. Her blonde hair swept into a sleek knot that gave her an air of lethal precision. She had spent over a decade climbing her way up the corporate ladder and had made it very clear to everyone that she intended to climb further. Her eyes flicked between Aidan and Bella with the sharp calculation of someone who smelled a headline. Bella tried to appear normal, though she could barely swallow a bite. She replayed last night on a loop, the water dripping from her skin, his voice breaking when he said her name, the way he could not move, the raw, unfiltered shock in his eyes that should not have been there, that could never be allowed to happen again. She forced herself to focus on the retreat schedule printed on the notepad before her, but every sound seemed amplified, every shifting glance suddenly suspicious. When the first morning briefing began, she took a seat in the section reserved for mid-level managers and junior strategists. She reminded herself she belonged there. She had earned her place. But her heart pounded like she was a trespasser in a world built for people who had grown up strolling through country clubs and summer estates. Aidan opened the meeting with the kind of effortless authority that made even the most seasoned executives straighten in their seats. He spoke clearly, confidently, his tone all business, but Bella sensed the strain beneath it, and she was not the only one. Genevieve's gaze sharpened each time Aidan's eyes flickered in Bella's direction, once during a discussion about the upcoming fall product launch. Aidan paused mid-sentence when Bella raised her hand to offer an idea. It was only a fraction of a second, but it was enough. Genevieve noticed, the COO noticed, and Bella felt her palms grow damp. She spoke anyway, refusing to let fear silence her. Her voice stayed steady as she outlined a refined demographic breakdown that could shift the entire campaign. The room murmured with interest. Before anyone else could comment, Aidan said quietly, "She is right. It carries long-term scalability and aligns with projected consumer behavior." Bella felt the words like a hand brushing her cheek. Too gentle, too personal. She kept her eyes fixed on the screen while her pulse thundered. Genevieve tilted her head, studying them both. Interesting, she murmured too softly for anyone but Bella to hear. Bella shifted in her chair, uneasy. When the meeting ended, people filtered out to grab coffee and prepare for the next session. Bella stayed behind for a moment to gather her notes, trying to steady her breathing. But Aiden remained at the front of the room, closing his laptop slowly, as if he needed time to gather himself as well. Their eyes met, unplanned, unguarded. Aiden's expression flickered with something she could not name. Shame, hunger, conflict, maybe all three. She had to leave, now. She stood so quickly her chair scraped the floor. She slipped out of the conference room and walked briskly down the hallway, lined with glass walls that overlooked the cliffs and ocean. She told herself she was fine. She had survived worse. She could survive this. But when she reached the espresso bar set up near the lounge, her hands were shaking too much to pour a cup. That was when she heard the footsteps. She turned, heart pounding. It was not Aiden, it was Genevieve. And Genevieve was smiling, the kind of smile people wore when they had spotted a crack in someone else's armor. "You seem nervous this morning, Bella," she said casually, though her eyes were anything but casual. Rough night, Bella forced a neutral expression. "Just tired. Long day yesterday," Genevieve hummed, unconvinced. "Your presentation this morning was strong, very confident." Bella thanked her, unsure of the angle. Genevieve moved closer until her perfume, something sharp and expensive, filled the air. Aiden seemed particularly engaged with your ideas. Her tone was light, but her gaze was a blade. Bella swallowed hard. He always engages with strategy. He is the CEO. Genevieve's eyebrows lifted as if Bella had just told a joke. Perhaps, but I have been watching Mr. Hawthorne for nearly a decade. He does not often linger his attention on junior associates. Bella felt the burn crawl up her neck. There is nothing going on. Genevieve studied her for a long moment. I hope that is true. She leaned in a fraction closer, because in our world, perception matters more than truth, and perception can destroy careers before the truth ever gets a chance to speak. Before Bella could respond, Genevieve turned and walked away in graceful predatory strides. Bella stood, frozen pulse kicking against her ribs. The warning had been gentle, but she knew a threat when she heard one. The rest of the morning unfolded in a haze. During lunch, she felt the weight of curious glances from colleagues who whispered behind coffee cups. Aiden remained composed, but remote directing conversations with practiced ease, though his gaze kept drifting toward her with attention he could not completely hide. Bella's embarrassment did not fade. It deepened. She remembered the way Aiden had stood by the pool, stunned not by the situation, but by her. And that terrified her, because she had seen something in him last night that she could not unsee. Something dangerous, something real, and something that could cost both of them everything. Bella was on her way to the strategy workshop in Pavilion C when she heard her name spoken in a voice that stopped her steps instantly. Not loud, not sharp, just low enough to carry authority and something else beneath it. Something she had been trying desperately to avoid. Aiden stood at the end of the long glass hallway that connected the main villa to the beachfront conference rooms. Sunlight spilled across the corridor in bright rectangles, casting reflections of the ocean below onto the glass walls. He looked out of place here, too powerful and too controlled for a hallway that felt almost fragile. His suit jacket was off his tie, loosened by a fraction, and his sleeves were rolled just enough to reveal the veins along his forearms. It was the most unguarded she had ever seen him look during work hours. Bella's pulse kicked. She told herself to keep walking. Pretend she had not heard him. Pretend that last night at the pool had never happened. Pretend her entire life was not one long cycle of wanting things she was not allowed to want. But he said her name again, softer. Bella, please. She slowed, stopped, turned. He took a few steps toward her, closing the distance with careful restraint. She glanced around quickly. The hallway was empty. For the moment, anyone could pass through at any time. Anyone could see them. Anyone could make assumptions that would burn her career to the ground before she even reached 26. She straightened her shoulders. "Mr. Hawthorne," she said, keeping her tone professional even as her heartbeat ricocheted through her. "I am due in the workshop in 3 minutes. Then I will make this fast." His voice was tight, as if he was struggling to contain something that threatened to break loose. He stopped just a few feet from her, not close enough to touch, but close enough that she felt him like a gravitational force. "What happened last night at the pool," he began, then paused and dragged a hand through his hair, sending it into disarray. It was the first time she had seen his composure fracture so visibly. Bella felt heat climb up her neck. She kept her gaze fixed somewhere over his shoulder. "We should not talk about that night, ever." Aiden exhaled sharply, not angry but frustrated. "I know, but it is all I have been thinking about since." Her throat tightened. A rush of memories flashed through her. Moonlight, cold water, his stunned expression, her humiliation, and the undeniable terrifying truth she had seen in his eyes. She forced herself to step back, needing space. "With respect, sir, it was an unfortunate accident, nothing more." His jaw clenched at her words. "Accident. Is that what you believe?" She swallowed hard. What else could it be? Aiden looked at her in a way that made her breath catch, as if he were seeing the truth she was trying to hide behind professionalism and distance. "Bella, I did not look at you because of the situation. I looked at you because I could not look away." Her stomach dropped. "Stop, please. You cannot say things like that. You are my boss. I am a junior employee. There cannot be anything. There will not be anything." Aiden stepped closer, just enough that the warmth of his body brushed the air between them. He kept his hands at his sides, strained with control. "I know the rules. I wrote half of them myself. I have never broken them, not once, not ever." But last night he inhaled, then whispered words that felt too real for the bright corridor surrounding them. Last night the rules stopped feeling strong enough. Bella's pulse hammered. "This cannot happen," she said softly. "You know what people already think. You know perception matters more than truth in this company. Genevieve saw us talking earlier. I know she did, and she is not the only one watching." He stiffened slightly, a shadow passing over his features. "I saw her on her phone. She was taking pictures of something. Maybe us, maybe something else. But she will use whatever she can." Aiden nodded. "I know exactly what Genevieve is capable of, and I know she has been waiting years for an opportunity like this. That is why we need to be careful." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Careful means distance. It means nothing happened, and nothing ever will." She expected him to argue, to insist she misunderstood. But instead a painful sort of honesty flickered across his expression. "I wish I could lie to you and say I feel nothing. It would make this easier. But I stopped lying to myself months ago." Bella felt the world tilt. Months. He had felt something for months. She turned her head away because looking into his eyes was too dangerous, too real. You cannot tell me that. You cannot bring me into whatever you are feeling. I may lose everything. And so might you. His voice dropped to a whisper that trembled at the edges. I know. That is why I am trying so hard not to cross the line. But every time you walk into a room, every time you speak, every time you challenge me, and you are the only one brave enough to do it, I lose a little more control than I can afford to lose. Her breath stuttered. She hated how much the words affected her. She had tried so hard to remain detached, to convince herself that any attention he gave her was purely professional. But last night had shattered that illusion, and now he was giving her pieces of the truth she had never expected to hear out loud. Aiden stepped back finally, as if giving her space was the only kindness he had left to offer. I am sorry, he whispered. I should not have said any of this. Bella nodded, even though her heart was splintering under the weight of everything unsaid. Thank you for being honest, but we cannot do this. You know that. I know. His voice was rough, but knowing does not make it easier. The hallway stayed silent for a few seconds, filled only by the faint crash of waves below the glass. Then footsteps echoed distantly from the far end of the corridor. Aiden snapped back into CEO posture instantly. Shoulders squared expression shuddered. Bella turned as well, composing her face. But as the figure approached, she felt her heart sink. Genevieve. The VP slowed her steps when she saw the two of them, her eyes glinting with quiet triumph. She lifted her phone slightly, not enough to be confrontational, but enough to make a point. Interesting place for a private chat. She said, her tone feather light, but edged in steel. Bella felt the blood drain from her face. Aiden's jaw tightened. Nothing private, just work. Genevieve's smile sharpened. Of course, everything is always just work. She walked past them, heels clicking in a rhythm that sounded ominous. Bella felt her stomach fold into itself. Aiden saw it too, saw the moment fear replaced every other emotion in her eyes. His voice softened, barely audible. I will handle this. She shook her head, her whisper trembling. You cannot, not without making it worse. Then her eyes lifted to his with a truth that frightened them both. And not without making everything between us impossible. She walked away before he could respond, before she could change her mind, before the weight of what she felt crushed the last boundary they had left. Aiden stayed behind, staring through the glass at the restless ocean below, knowing something irreversible had shifted, and knowing Genevieve had just found the crack she needed to start tearing everything apart. Bella spent the rest of the afternoon trying to drown herself in work, but no amount of color, coding the pitch deck, or reviewing market data could stop her pulse from jumping every time she remembered Aiden's voice in the glass hallway. His confession had carved itself into her mind with surgical precision. I stopped lying to myself months ago. She wanted to pretend she had not heard it. She wanted to pretend she did not feel anything in return. But pretending had never been harder, especially when avoiding him was nearly impossible. The retreat schedule forced them into the same rooms, the same workshops, the same collaborative discussions, and people were watching now. The retreat's coastal greenhouse, a stunning glass structure filled with tropical plants and suspended lights, was the setting for the evening's creative strategy session. Bella arrived early, hoping to secure a seat far from the front. The air inside the greenhouse was warm and damp, fragrant with jasmine and the salted wind drifting in from the cliffs below. She took out her notebook and tried to appear absorbed in it, even though her mind was anything but calm. When the executives filtered in, she kept her gaze lowered, but her heart betrayed her the moment Aiden walked in. She felt him before she saw him. The shift in air pressure, the quiet ripple of attention. Even the plants seemed to react. He wore a charcoal shirt with the top button undone. The sleeves rolled in a way that revealed his forearms and the tension running through them. He looked like a man trying to hold himself together. He scanned the room. His eyes stopped when they reached her. Bella stared determinedly at her notebook, pretending not to notice the way her breath caught. During the session, she managed to avoid interacting with him directly until the team split into smaller groups to propose solutions to a failing product line. Her group struggled with a concept involving customer loyalty incentives, and Bella, despite trying to remain invisible, stepped in with an idea about building emotional layers into the user experience. Before she could finish explaining, Aiden appeared beside their table. His presence was like a gravitational field shifting. "Keep going," he said, his voice composed but unmistakably intent. "What you were describing, continue." Bella's pulse kicked. She tried to explain the idea again, her voice soft but steady, though her hands shook slightly as she gestured to the mock-up on her tablet. Aiden listened as if nothing else existed in the room, as if every word she said mattered, as if he knew exactly how dangerous that kind of attention was. When she finished, he nodded once slowly, with admiration he did not bother to hide. "That is brilliant, Bella. The idea is fresh, emotionally grounded, and scalable. It elevates the entire product experience." Several team members exchanged glances. A few murmured in agreement. But Bella knew what the others were thinking. She could feel their eyes digging beneath her skin. Aiden must have realized it too, because he took a deliberate step back, adopting a more formal tone as he addressed the group. "Her concept deserves further exploration. Carry on." Then he walked away. But Bella saw it, the moment before he turned. The flicker of something raw in his eyes, something only she was meant to see. Her heart twisted painfully. When the session ended, heavy storm clouds had rolled in, turning the last remaining sunlight into a deep gray wash. People hurried toward the main villa, laughing nervously as thunder rumbled over the ocean. Bella gathered her things and rushed into the greenhouse's exit corridor, but the moment she stepped outside, rain slammed down in fierce, sudden sheets. Wind whipped across the patio, making it impossible to walk more than a few feet without being soaked. And she had no umbrella. She darted back under the overhang at the greenhouse entrance, hugging her notebook to her chest, her clothes already damp. Aiden appeared seconds later, caught in the same storm droplet streaking down his shirt and hair. Their eyes met with mutual disbelief. "Great," she whispered under her breath. "Just great." He gave a strained laugh, pushing wet hair back from his forehead. "Looks like we are stuck here for a minute." She faced forward, refusing to look at him again. The rain hammered the pavement in deafening sheets, trapping them in a small pocket of warmth and tension beneath the glass canopy. He stood beside her but kept a careful distance, though even that did nothing to lessen the awareness sparking between them. Bella lifted her arms, rubbing them for warmth. The breeze carried the scent of rain ocean and faint citrus from the greenhouse plants, You will catch a cold, Aiden said quietly. She stiffened. Please do not pretend to worry about me. It makes everything harder. His jaw tightened. I am not pretending. I have never pretended with you. She closed her eyes for half a second, hating how her chest reacted to the softness in his voice. Aiden moved a fraction closer, the rain muted by the glass above them. Bella, I know I made this worse earlier. I know I should have kept my distance. She laughed shakily, her voice trembling. Distance is the only thing that keeps us safe. And yet here we are, not safe, not distant. She finally turned to face him, rain reflected in her eyes like fractured light. Why are you doing this? What do you want from me? His throat worked as he swallowed hard. I do not want anything from you. I want you. The air left her lungs, storm or not. Heat crashed through her. You cannot say that. You cannot feel that. I have tried not to, he said, voice breaking for the first time. I have tried harder than you will ever know. But feelings are not switches. They do not obey logic. And mine do not seem to care about the rules I built my life around. Bella stepped back, but her heel caught on the wet tile and she stumbled. Aiden reached out instinctively, his hand gripping her arm, steadying her before she fell. The contact was electric, immediate, uncompromising. Her breath caught as she stared at his hand on her. He realized too late what he had done. Slowly, hesitantly, he loosened his grip, but he did not let go. His voice dropped to something rough. I cannot keep pretending I do not feel you in every room we share. She whispered, more pleading than angry. You are going to break me if you keep saying things like that. His eyes softened with something that looked like pain. And you are going to break me if you walk away and pretend none of it is real. They stood like that for a suspended heartbeat, their breaths uneven, the storm raging around them like an echo of everything inside them. Bella blinked back the ache behind her eyelids. I am scared, she whispered. So am I. He moved his hand from her arm, letting his fingers trail down, just slightly, barely grazing her wrist, before he finally withdrew. The loss of that touch felt like a temperature drop. The rain continued to fall in violent sheets, but the space between them was far more dangerous than any storm. The storm should have washed everything clean, but by the time Bella returned to the main villa, drenched and trembling, she felt heavier than before. She changed into dry clothes, tied her hair back, and forced herself into the evening networking mixer, where all executives were expected to bond professionally. She told herself she could get through an hour, maybe less. She lasted 12 minutes. Conversations blurred around her, executives swirling with glasses of wine as if gossip were oxygen. She tried to stay at the edge of the room, silent and unnoticed, but every time she glanced up, she met a pair of curious eyes, then 2 pairs, then more. She felt the shift before she understood it. The tightening of the air, the 2 quiet murmurs, the way people's glances weren't sliding over her, they were sticking to her. Something had changed, and she was at the center of it. It began with a small cluster of marketing associates whispering beside the fireplace. One of them looked straight at her with an expression that twisted Bella's stomach. Pity and something sharp. She pulled out her phone, pretending to scroll, but her hands trembled so badly she could barely keep a grip on it. A message notification appeared, then another and another. 3 colleagues, 2 friends from different departments, even her roommate back in New York. She tapped the first message. Her breath folded in on itself. Someone posted a photo of you and Aiden. It looks bad. The second. Are the rumors true, Bella? The third. Girl, what happened at that retreat? Bella's pulse slammed so loud she barely heard the music playing overhead. She tapped the link in the fourth message, a post on the Hawthorne Innovations internal network. Not anonymous, shared by someone under a fake account name, but easy enough to trace. The image loaded in one endless, agonizing second. The photo was taken in the glass hallway. Bella standing close to Aiden, his posture angled toward her, her face tilted up toward him. From a distance out of context under the harsh hallway lighting, it looked like something intimate, something forbidden, something a CEO and junior employee should never be caught doing. A caption sat beneath it. Looks like Hawthorne has a new favorite. Bella couldn't breathe. Her fingers went cold numb. It was enough. It was enough to destroy her. Enough to destroy him. Enough to destroy everything. The post had been up for 7 minutes. It already had 182 comments. She forced herself to click them. Should have known. This is what happens when CEOs get bored. She is so young. Of course she slept her way up. I knew she looked too confident in meetings. He always stared at her. This explains why she got invited to the retreat. Bella's throat tightened, her vision blurred. It felt like drowning, except there was no water. Only humiliation, only fear, only betrayal. She backed up until her shoulder hit the wall behind her, trying to steady her breath. Then a second post appeared at the top of the feed. A video. 30 seconds. Someone had recorded Aiden during the morning briefing, zooming in on the moment he paused when Bella spoke. The camera lingered on the subtle shift in his expression, the flicker of something soft when he looked at her. The caption read, "Still think the rumors are fake." The video was worse than the photo. The video made it look real. Her entire body felt like it was dissolving. Somewhere across the room, someone laughed. The sound sliced into her like a blade. She turned to leave, desperate for air, but the moment she stepped out into the hallway, her shoulder collided with someone. Genevieve, of course. The VP stood with her phone in hand, leaning against the wall with a calculated expression that made Bella's stomach twist into a hard knot. "Rough night again?" Genevieve asked sweetly. Bella froze. "You did this." Genevieve raised her brows in mock surprise. Did what post something on the internal network record? A video in a public meeting, take a photo in a hallway that anyone could have walked through. I am afraid none of this is illegal. If anything, it is quite transparent. Bella's voice cracked. "You are trying to ruin me." Genevieve lifted her glass, swirling the wine casually. "Do not flatter yourself. I am dealing with a much bigger problem than you." She glanced toward Aiden, who was across the room, speaking with the CFO and COO, unaware of the chaos forming like a storm behind his back. "The bigger problem is the golden boy running this company. And he just handed me exactly what I needed." Bella felt faint. "Why are you doing this?" Genevieve leaned in, her eyes sharp with cold ambition. "Because this company deserves a leader who follows rules, not one who breaks them for pretty little associates he cannot resist. And because I have waited 10 years for the moment, he finally makes a mistake big enough to expose." Bella took a step back, her heart pounding so violently she swore it echoed in the hallway. "You are going to hurt people for this, people who did nothing wrong." Genevieve smiled without warmth. "Collateral damage, it is nothing personal." Except it was. Bella could feel it. She could feel the venom in Genevieve's calmness. She could feel the danger. Before she could respond, noise rose behind them. Conversations faltered. People pulled out their phones. A wave of whispers swept the entire room. Aiden had seen it. Someone had shown him. The internal post was now trending inside the company Slack as well. His jaw clenched the muscle, twitching in a way Bella had only seen once, when someone lied to him in a board meeting. His eyes scanned the room, found hers, held, and everything inside that look was fire. Not at her, never at her, but at whoever had touched her career with poison. In seconds he was across the room, moving through the crowd with a precision that made people step aside instinctively. When he reached her, his voice was low, but shaking with anger. "Bella, are you all right?" She shook her head, tears burning but refusing to fall. "I am fine. I will be fine." But her voice betrayed her. Aiden turned sharply to the circle of executives who were pretending not to stare. His tone was arctic. "Who posted that?" Silence. Then a nervous voice from the back. "It was already online when we saw it." Aiden's expression darkened further. He was not the type to lose control in public. Bella had seen him navigate billion-dollar deals without raising his voice once. But now his self-control was fraying at the edges. "Bring me the original poster." He demanded it like a command to the universe. The room flattened into fear. Bella stepped forward quickly, touching his arm for a split second before snatching her hand back. "Please do not do this here. It will only look worse. It will make them think you are defending me because you have something to hide." His eyes dropped to hers with raw, painful intensity. "I am defending you because you are being attacked." She shook her head. "No, I am being judged, but you are being targeted." He stared at her for a long moment, jaw tight, breathing unsteady. Then he whispered, "We will fix this. Somehow we will fix it." But as Bella looked around the room at the faces watching them, the whispers spreading like wildfire, and the storm outside raging as if mimicking everything inside her, she realized the truth. Something had broken tonight, something that could not be taken back, and the fallout had only just begun. Bella barely remembered the ride back to New York. One moment she was in the Montauk mansion, surrounded by whispers sharp enough to cut skin. The next, she was in the back of a black Hawthorne Innovations SUV, rain, streaking down the windows as the coastline blurred past. Aiden sat beside her, silent but tense in a way that made the air feel tight and thin. His hand rested on his knee, fingers curled slightly, as if resisting the urge to reach for her. Every time headlights illuminated the interior of the car, she saw the storm in his eyes. Anger, guilt, determination, and something else that scared her more than everything else combined. Fear. He was afraid for her, afraid for himself, afraid of what the board would do when they found out. The board demanded an immediate meeting. 12 hours later, they walked into Hawthorne Tower. Bella walked beside Aiden through the marble lobby, feeling impossibly small in a building built by power she did not possess. She wore her most professional outfit, a black blazer and fitted trousers, hair pulled tightly into a bun armor that felt too thin to protect her. Aiden, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, exuded authority, but she could see the tension behind every controlled step. He kept ranking executives informed without revealing unnecessary details, moving through crisis mode with lethal efficiency. But when they stepped out of the elevator on the top floor just outside the boardroom, he paused. "Bella." He said her name softly, as if grounding himself. "You do not have to walk into that room with me. I should be the one answering for this." Her heart twisted. and leave you alone to face them. You did nothing wrong. Neither did you, but they do not care about the truth. They care about optics, and this looks like a scandal." She finally met his eyes, letting him see the fear she could not hide. "If they ask me to resign, I will do it." He inhaled sharply. "No, you will not say that. You deserve your career. Everything you have achieved, everything you could become. You will not give that up because someone twisted a hallway conversation into a headline. What if they force it? Then they will lose one of the most brilliant minds in this company." His conviction shook her. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe she was worth defending. But she also knew this world. Power was protection, and she did not have any. The boardroom doors opened with a heavy mechanical click, and Richard Hawthorne Aiden's uncle, chairman of the board, stepped out. He was older, silver-haired, stern, and intimidating in a way that felt colder than Aiden's intensity. Richard looked between them with clear disapproval. "Come in, now." They walked inside. The boardroom was enormous, dominated by a long glass table that reflected the city skyline stretching beyond the windows. 15 board members sat in high-backed chairs, each expression varying from curious to hostile. Screens displayed the damaging photo and the video clip. Bella's cheeks burned at the sight. Richard sat at the head of the table. Aiden and Bella stood before them like defendants awaiting judgment. Richard's voice cut through the silence. "Mr. Hawthorne, Ms. Harlow, explain." Aiden spoke first calm, but clipped. "The photo is misleading and taken out of context. Nothing inappropriate occurred. Bella and I were discussing a project." Richard raised a brow. At that distance, in that tone, in a private hallway, with no witnesses, several board members nodded grimly. Aiden's jaw tightened. "The hallway is a public space. Anyone could have walked through, including the person who took that photo." Margaret Vance, the oldest board member, leaned forward. Her voice was sharp. "Is it true, Mr. Hawthorne, that you have shown this employee repeated favoritism?" Bella opened her mouth immediately. "No, absolutely not. I earned every assignment, every opportunity." Aiden added, "If anything, I have been harder on her than others." Thomas Wright, the CFO and Aiden's closest ally, nodded. "That is true. I have witnessed it. Aiden holds her to higher standards." Margaret frowned. "That does not help your case." Aiden did not flinch. "Then let me make it plain. I did not pursue Ms. Harlow. I have never used my position to pressure her in any way, and I will not tolerate any insinuation that she received special treatment." Richard's eyes narrowed. "And what of the rumors circulating internally, rumors you have allowed to grow by refusing to address them publicly?" "That was Genevieve's doing," Bella said quietly. "She posted the photo. She spread the video." Richard looked unimpressed. "Do you have proof?" Bella's hands shook slightly. "No." A board member scoffed. "Convenient." But Bella continued, her voice firmed. "But I know what she wants. This is not about me. It is about taking down Aiden." Richard's gaze sharpened. "Mr. Hawthorne, are you saying your VP of PR has engaged in internal sabotage?" Aiden met his uncle's gaze with absolute certainty. "Yes. For years she has been manipulating narratives, undermining colleagues, and waiting for the first opportunity to weaponize public perception. She saw it last night, and she took it." Murmurs rippled across the table. Margaret raised a hand. "In any case, the question remains. Is there a personal relationship between you two?" Bella froze. Her stomach dropped. Aiden looked at her, and for the first time, fear flickered in his expression. Not fear of the board, fear of hurting her, fear of lying. fear of telling the truth. Bella felt her throat tighten. She whispered, "No. There is no relationship." But Aiden stepped forward, his voice steady. "There is something between us." Bella's breath shattered. The room erupted. Voices overlapped. Outrage, disbelief, accusations. Richard slammed his palm on the table. Silence. Aiden continued. "I am telling you the truth because transparency matters. I should have disclosed my feelings the moment I realized they existed." Bella whispered, "Aiden, please." He shook his head slightly, eyes never leaving the board. "If you want to remove me, then do it for something real. Not because of rumors, gossip, or a manipulated photo. But do not destroy her career in the process. She did nothing wrong." Bella's voice trembled. "He is right. If someone must resign, let it be me. I will step down immediately." Aiden turned to her, eyes blazing. "No, you will not ruin your future because of this. If she goes, I go." The board froze. Richard stared at him as if Aiden had just confessed to arson. "You would resign your position as CEO for this employee?" Aiden's reply was immediate and unwavering. "Yes, because I will not allow her to be sacrificed for the sake of appearances." Bella whispered, "Aiden, stop, please." But he shook his head. "No, I will not stand here and let them tear you apart." Margaret scoffed. "This is absurd. You are willing to walk away from a legacy your family built over 50 years for an infatuation." Aiden met her gaze calmly. "You call it infatuation. I call it honesty. I have spent my entire life choosing this company over everything else, and I was miserable. She changed that." Bella's knees weakened. She gripped the edge of the table to stay upright. The board members leaned in, whispering to each other. Tension strangled the room. Richard finally stood. "We need a recess. 15 minutes. Aiden helped Bella out of the boardroom as murmurs swelled behind them. The door shut. The hallway felt too bright, too quiet. Bella collapsed onto the bench along the wall, burying her face in her hands. Aiden knelt in front of her. "Bella, look at me." She lifted her eyes, tears streaking down her cheeks. "You should not have said that. You should not sacrifice everything for me." His voice broke. "You matter more to me than any job, more than any legacy, more than anything they could take." Her breath stilled, her world tilted, and she knew in that moment the board could destroy their careers. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could unmake what had just happened. The board recessed for 15 excruciating minutes, but for Bella and Aiden, it felt like an entire lifetime, suspended between what they wanted and what they feared. They sat in silence on opposite ends of the long hallway, outside the boardroom, the city glittering beyond the windows, like a world they no longer recognized. Bella tried to calm her racing heart, but her thoughts spun uncontrollably. She could not stop replaying Aiden's words. "You matter more to me than any job." He had said it in front of the most powerful people in the company. He had said it like it was the truest thing he had ever known. And that terrified her, because she felt it too. And that was even more dangerous. When the boardroom doors finally opened, Richard Hawthorne stepped out and announced coldly that they would reconvene the next morning for a final vote. There would be no resolution tonight, just uncertainty. Aiden nodded stiffly, jaw tight, and thanked the board with a professionalism that made Bella ache. She knew how much self-control that composure cost him. He turned to her in the hallway. "Let's go." The SUV waiting on the curb took them back to Hawthorne Tower. Neither of them spoke during the ride up to the penthouse rooftop, the one place in the entire building where the cameras could not reach. and the noise of the world fell away beneath the wind. Aiden swiped his keycard, and the door opened to the open air. The night sky stretched above them, framed by the glass railing. The city glowed below, alive and indifferent. Bella walked to the edge, hugging herself as the breeze brushed her arms. She felt small, exposed. Aiden stood a few feet behind her, silent. The restraint in his posture was almost painful to look at. For a while, neither of them spoke. The wind filled the silence with the soft hum of distant traffic and the steady thrum of a city that refused to pause even for heartbreak. Finally, Bella whispered, "I do not know how to fix this." Aiden stepped closer, but not too close. He answered quietly, "You are not the one who needs to fix it. I am." She turned to face him, her voice trembling. "You keep saying that, but the truth is, we are both caught in something that might destroy us. It already has." His eyes held hers, raw and honest. "I just wish I had told you sooner." Her breath hitched. "Told me what I feel. What I have felt for months." She shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "You cannot say that, not when everything is falling apart. Not when the board is deciding whether to fire you because of me." Aiden took a slow step forward, the tension between them tightening like a wire. "They are not deciding whether to fire me because of you. They are deciding whether they can trust a CEO who refuses to lie about something important." Bella swallowed hard. "You should have lied. It would have made this easier." But his expression softened with something almost heartbroken. "I could not lie. Not about this, not about you." She felt the night air thicken heavy with everything they had not allowed themselves to say. Why her whisper was barely audible. "Why is this so important to you?" Aiden exhaled shakily, as if releasing years of restraint. "Because the night you stepped out of that pool, I realized it wasn't your body I couldn't look away from. It was your courage." Bella froze. Her heartbeat stopped. Aiden continued, voice quiet but fierce. "This world was not built for people like you. It was built for people like me. People with legacy, money, a last name that opens doors. But you walk through those same doors with nothing but your work ethic and your brilliance and your belief that you deserve to stand where they stand. You exist in rooms that try to crush you, and you refuse to let them." Bella felt tears blur her vision. Aiden moved closer, stopping when he was a breath away. "I have watched you fight your way through this industry with more strength than I have ever had." And the truth is, he paused, searching her face. With something like reverence, "I fell in love with that strength long before last night." Bella took a shaky step back, overwhelmed. "Aiden, please, I am scared. I am so scared of what this could cost us." Aiden swallowed his voice, breaking in a way she had never heard. "I am scared too, but I am more scared of pretending I do not feel this, pretending you do not matter. Pretending last night did not rip something open in me that I can never close again." She closed her eyes, tears slipping free. "And what happens if the board fires you? What happens if I lose my job? What happens if the whole world sees us as something ugly instead of something true?" He took another small step toward her, stopping only when she lifted a hand in fearful instinct. Aiden froze, honoring her boundary, but his voice softened into something that made her breath tremble. "Then we face it together. We face every headline, every rumor, every fallout. Because for me, the only unacceptable loss is losing you." Bella's chest tightened painfully. Aiden's breath hitched, as though he had been holding back an ocean. Slowly, carefully, he extended his hand, not touching her, just offering. If you do not want this, say the word, and I swear I will bury every feeling I have, and we will go back to the way things were. Bella looked at his hand, at the man in front of her, at the fear in his eyes that betrayed how deeply he meant it. And she knew there was no going back, not really. Something irreversible had happened between them, something that no scandal, no board meeting, no corporate policy could erase. She stepped forward, just an inch, but enough. Aiden inhaled sharply, as if the air had been knocked out of him. She whispered, I do not want to go back. His eyes closed with something like agony and relief combined. When he opened them again, they were unguarded, vulnerable, beautiful in their rawness. Bella's voice cracked. I do not know what comes next. Everything is falling apart around us. Aiden stepped closer until their foreheads almost touched. I do not care what comes next, as long as it is real. And then, with a tenderness that made her knees weaken, he cupped her face with both hands. He paused, giving her a chance to step away. She did not. Their lips met in a kiss that felt like a confession and a collapse, a surrender and a salvation. It was not rushed, not desperate. It was slow, deep tremoring, with months of restraint shattering in a single breath. The kiss tasted of fear and longing and a kind of truth. Neither of them had been allowed to speak aloud. When they finally pulled apart, Bella exhaled shakily against his lips. Aiden rested his forehead against hers, whispering, Whatever happens tomorrow, you are not alone. Not anymore. She closed her eyes, letting those words hold her together. Because for the first time since the scandal broke, she believed them, and that belief felt like survival. Bella barely slept. After the rooftop kiss, after the confession that changed everything, she returned to her apartment and lay awake staring at the ceiling, while her heart raced with a mix of terror and a warmth she could not shut off. Aiden's words echoed through her mind again and again. As long as it is real, she knew it was real. Knew it in the way her chest tightened when she remembered his hands on her face, the way his voice broke when he said he would bury everything if she walked away. But reality was not a rooftop bathed in moonlight. Reality was the board. Reality was corporate politics. Reality was the fallout waiting like a blade under every breath. And by morning she felt it. In the pit of her stomach, in the stiffness of the air, in the pitiless vibration of her phone buzzing nonstop with messages she ignored. She dressed in a simple blouse and black slacks, hair tied back in a low twist, professional, neutral, unremarkable, the kind of woman no one could accuse of seducing a CEO, but no outfit in the world could protect her from what was coming. She arrived at Hawthorne Tower early, hoping to slip through the lobby unnoticed. Instead, she walked into a sea of glances, some pitying, some curious, some cold. Whispered fragments floated toward her as she passed. That is her, the girl from the photo. Pretty, no wonder. She kept walking, refusing to break stride. In the elevator, her reflection looked composed, almost calm. It was a lie. When she stepped into the hallway leading to the top-floor conference suite, she found Aiden already there. He stood with his hands braced against the cool marble wall, head bowed slightly. He looked exhausted, like he had not slept either. When he lifted his eyes and saw her, his expression softened instantly. Bella, she swallowed hard. Are you ready for this? No, but I am not going anywhere. For the first time that morning she breathed. He offered his hand not to hold, but to steady her, and she brushed her fingers against his briefly before letting go. A silent promise. They walked into the boardroom together. 15 stern faces awaited them. Richard Hawthorne sat at the head of the table, gavel in hand, like a judge preparing to deliver a sentence. A hush fell over the room. "Please be seated," Richard said. Aidan and Bella sat side by side, though a formal gap separated their chairs. Richard cleared his throat. "Yesterday we heard opening statements regarding the allegations of misconduct and the romantic involvement between CEO Aidan Hawthorne and junior associate Bella Harlow. Today we vote on the company's response." Bella tried to keep her breathing steady, but her throat tightened painfully. Aidan glanced at her, once the flicker of reassurance in his eyes, steadying her spine. Margaret Vance spoke first. "Before we vote, we must make one thing clear. A relationship between a CEO and an employee creates an undeniable conflict of interest. It threatens the integrity of decision-making and compromises the reputation of this company." Bella's stomach twisted. Several board members nodded, murmuring assent. Another member added, "The optics alone are problematic. We cannot operate with even the appearance of impropriety." Aidan's jaw clenched. He spoke calmly, but with unmistakable conviction. "Impropriety did not occur. I have never compromised my ethics. I have never used my position to pressure anyone. And I have never allowed personal feelings to influence corporate decisions." Bella spoke up, voice clear despite her shaking hands. "And I have never received favoritism. I earned my place on merit." Richard raised an eyebrow but did not interrupt. Margaret leaned forward. "Ms. Harlow, your campaign proposal for European expansion, who approved it?" Bella replied evenly. "I prepared it independently, Mistress. Hawthorne did not even see it until the morning I presented it to the team." Thomas Wright, CFO, nodded. "That is true. I requested the proposal's early review, not Aidan." Margaret looked displeased at losing ground. And yet public perception does not care about internal processes. It cares about headlines. CEO caught with junior employee. Scandal at Hawthorne Innovations. Aidan's voice dropped to something cold. "We do not run this company based on gossip. We run it based on results." Genevieve Clark paused in the doorway, her arms crossed, watching the proceedings with predatory interest. Her presence tightened Bella's stomach. Richard gestured for silence. "We must address 3 questions. 1, did misconduct occur? 2, is the relationship ongoing? 3, how do we protect Hawthorne Innovations while maintaining ethical standards?" The room grew so quiet, Bella could hear her heartbeat. Richard turned first to Aidan. "Are you in a romantic relationship with Ms. Harlow?" Aidan's answer came without hesitation. "Yes." Bella closed her eyes. Soft gasps rippled through the room. Margaret threw her pen onto the table. Absurd, completely unacceptable. Richard looked at Bella. "And you," Bella swallowed her fear. "Yes, we are in a relationship." Because denying it now would be lying, and she could not lie about the one thing that had ever felt truly hers. Richard nodded slowly. "Then the question becomes whether this relationship can continue without compromising the company." Genevieve smirked, arms folded smugly. "I move to terminate Ms. Harlow's employment immediately. She poses a liability and invites lawsuits. And I move to remove Aidan from his position as CEO. This company cannot afford his recklessness." Bella's blood ran cold. That woman wanted their destruction like oxygen. But Thomas stood. "Enough. We all know Genevieve has been aiming for Aidan's position for years. Her statements should be taken in context with her motives clearly examined." Several board members looked uncertain. Another spoke up. Perhaps termination is too severe. Bella is a talented asset. Losing her over rumors seems wasteful. Aiden cut in sharply. Bella will not be terminated. If she leaves, so do I. That declaration didn't just ripple, it crashed through the room. Richard slammed the gavel. Aiden, be careful with your words. No. His voice was unwavering. I will not allow her to be sacrificed for appearances. Remove me instead, if you must. Bella's heart shattered and healed all at once. He meant it. He truly meant it. Margaret glared. We cannot let a CEO dictate terms based on personal entanglements. Bella stood slowly. I will resign. Silence snapped through the boardroom like a shockwave. Bella continued, voice steady, though her hands shook under the table. If my presence compromises the company, then I will remove myself. Aiden pivoted toward her, eyes blazing with disbelief. No, you will not throw away everything you have worked for because of me. She whispered, then what choice do we have? I will not let them fire you. Aiden turned back to the board. If she resigns, I resign. If she is punished, I am punished. Richard exhaled heavily. This is madness. Bella looked at him. Then let there be another option. Let me be reassigned. I will no longer report to Mr. Hawthorne. Let there be clear ethical guidelines. And let us disclose everything openly instead of operating in secrecy. A few board members exchanged thoughtful glances. She continued, scrutiny is fine. Ethics training is fine. Reassignment is fine. But do not punish us for being honest. Richard tapped his pen against the table. The room murmured. Thomas spoke. It is a reasonable compromise. We cannot lose either of them. The European expansion alone is worth keeping her. And we all know Aiden is the best CEO this company has ever had. Finally, Richard raised a hand. Enough, we will vote. The board members cast their votes silently. Bella held her breath. Aiden watched her, not them. Richard tallied the results, then stood. The board accepts your proposal. Bella will report to Thomas Wright going forward. The relationship must be disclosed. Ethics training is mandatory. Both of you will be under review for 1 year. Violations will not be tolerated. Bella's knees nearly gave out. Aiden exhaled with visible relief. Genevieve shot up from her chair, furious. This is a mistake, a dangerous precedent. Richard replied coldly. Your conduct will be reviewed separately. You may leave. Genevieve stormed out, rage radiating from her in waves. When the door shut behind her, Bella released a trembling breath. It was over. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But they had survived it. Aiden reached for her hand under the table, their fingers brushing in the smallest, most meaningful touch of her life. Richard cleared his throat. Meeting adjourned. Bella and Aiden walked out of the boardroom together, stepping into the hallway like two people who had just passed through fire and somehow emerged holding the same flame. And for the first time since the scandal broke, Bella allowed herself to hope. 6 months later, Montauk felt like another world. The salt wind was softer in September, the sunlight gentler, and the ocean stretched out in a calm blue shimmer that made everything seem possible again. Bella stepped out onto the terrace of the Hawthorne summer estate, her heels clicking lightly on the warm stone. The infinity pool glowed beneath the setting sun, a mirror of molten gold spilling into the horizon. It was impossible not to remember the night her entire life had changed here. The night she stepped out of this very pool believing she was alone, only to find Aiden Hawthorne standing in the doorway, eyes stormed with something she did not understand until much later. Back then, it was fear shock, Embarrassment, desire, confusion, and hunger, all tangled together. Now standing once again in the same place, she felt something completely different. Peace. Aiden approached her from behind his footsteps. Soft, his presence unmistakable, even before she turned. He had rolled up the sleeves of his white button-down, revealing the tanned strength of his forearms. His hair was ruffled by the ocean breeze. His eyes softened when he saw her. "I was wondering where you wandered off to," he said. "I needed a moment," Bella replied gently. "Being here again feels surreal." Aiden stepped beside her, looking out at the water. "Does it feel like a bad memory?" She shook her head, her smile faint and soft. "No, it feels like fate." He brushed his knuckles against her arm, not quite touching, just savoring the nearness. On the terrace behind them, the small celebration dinner had ended. The board, now much friendlier toward Bella, had spent the day touring the new Montauk Innovation Retreat they had approved under Aiden's leadership. It was the place where future leaders would gather for creative workshops, team building, and strategic planning. And Bella had been promoted to Director of Global Brand Narrative, a title she had once only dreamed of. She had earned the respect of the company not through scandal, but through results, creativity, and a kind of quiet strength that inspired people around her. Even Richard had congratulated her sincerely. And Genevieve had been removed permanently months ago after the internal investigation revealed her manipulation of media and misuse of confidential data. Justice had arrived slowly but decisively. Now, as the last guests drove away and the evening softened into dusk, the world felt still, safe, and deeply intimate. Aiden reached for Bella's hand, threading their fingers together. "Do you remember what you told me that night on the roof?" she asked, turning toward him. Aiden raised a brow. "I said a lot of things that night. I was desperate and in love and trying very hard not to lose you." Bella laughed quietly, leaning slightly into him. "You said whatever happens tomorrow, you are not alone." Aiden's expression shifted to something tender. "And I meant every word." He guided her toward the edge of the pool where the water reflected the sky in restless ripples. Bella stopped at the exact spot where she had stepped out of the pool half a year earlier. Her skin cold under the moonlight, her heartbeat wild, her shame sharp. But tonight there was no shame, no fear, only the man she loved standing so close she could feel the warmth radiating from him. She whispered, "If someone told me back then that I would someday come back to this place with you, I would have laughed." Aiden moved behind her, sliding his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "And yet, here we are," he murmured. Bella placed her hands over his. The ocean breeze lifted her hair. The sun slipped lower, painting the sky in shades of apricot and rose. Aiden's voice brushed her ear. "I brought you here because there is something I want to tell you." Bella turned in his arms, her pulse quickening. His gaze held hers with a depth that made her breath falter. "When I saw you step out of that pool that night, I did not just see a woman. I saw a life I could want if I let myself want anything." Bella's heart trembled. "And when you left my office after the board meeting," he continued, his voice lower, "I realized something else. I realized that my life was divided into two eras, before you and after you." A shaky breath escaped her. "Aiden." He shook his head gently. "Let me finish." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Bella froze. The world stilled. The air thinned. Aiden bent down on one knee, the golden light of sunset catching in his eyes. "Bella Harlow," he said, his voice steady but soft. "You were never just the girl in the scandal. You were never just the talent in the conference room or the woman I tried too hard not to fall for. You became my truth the moment you challenged me in that pitch meeting. You became my undoing the moment you stepped out of that pool. And you became my future the moment you stood beside me in front of the board. I love you. I love your strength, your honesty, your fire, your humility, your laughter, your stubbornness. I love the way you fight for your place in the world, and the way you make me fight to be a better man. He opened the box. Inside was a sapphire ring, the color of the ocean at twilight. Will you marry me? Bella stared at him, tears overflowing her chest, shaking with the force of everything she felt. She did not hesitate. Yes, yes, I will. Aiden exhaled a sound that was almost laughter and almost relief. As he slid the ring into her finger, Bella pulled him up into her arms, kissing him with a love that felt infinite. The ocean roared softly, the pool shimmered behind them. The world seemed to glow from the inside out. When they finally broke apart, Aiden pressed his forehead to hers. I wanted to bring you back to the place where everything began. She whispered, why, so we can rewrite the memory, he murmured. Not the night you were exposed and afraid, but the night you were loved. Bella closed her eyes, letting his words wash over her like the warm evening air. Then she opened them again and smiled. Let's make new memories. Aiden took her hand. Together they walked toward the water's edge, the same pool, the same place, but a different story now. A story no longer about fear or scandal or shame. A story about fate and love and the courage two people found in each other. They stepped back into the glow of the infinity pool as the sun dipped below the horizon, sealing the beginning of the life they were about to build together. A life that started exactly where everything once fell apart and transformed into something unforgettable. Thank you for staying with this story until the very last moment. If you are reading this right now, it means you felt something along the way. Maybe it was the tension at the pool. Maybe it was the fear of losing everything in the boardroom. Maybe it was the rooftop confession, or the moment Aiden finally got down on one knee. Whatever part touched you the most, I want you to take a second and breathe it in. Because stories like these remind us of something we often forget in the rush of real life. Love shows up when we least expect it. It challenges us, it scares us, it exposes us, but it also transforms us. If you enjoyed this moment with Bella and Aiden, if their journey made your heart race, or your chest ache, or your eyes well up just a little, then please help this story reach more people. By doing something simple but powerful, hit like. It tells the platform that you want more stories like this. Leave a comment. Tell me your favorite moment. Was it the rooftop kiss that finally broke the tension between them? Was it the moment Bella stood up in the boardroom and offered to resign to protect Aiden? Or was it the final scene at the pool when he proposed with the ocean's sunset behind them? Your comments give life to this community. They help other viewers feel like they are not alone in the way these stories move them. And most importantly, make sure you subscribe to the channel. That is how you become part of our little family. Here, a place where romance lives, where heartbreak heals, where courage grows, and where every night brings a new story with characters who feel real enough to touch. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. We post often, and every story is crafted with heart, with tension, with emotion, and with that cinematic spark you love. And if you want to take it one step further, share the story with someone who needs it. Maybe a friend who has been doubting her worth. Maybe someone who is scared to love again. Maybe someone who needs to be reminded that even messy, complicated beginnings can turn into beautiful endings. Stories have a way of reaching people at the right moment. You could be the reason someone smiles tonight. Before you go, tell me one more thing in the comments. If this were a movie, who would you cast as Aidan Hawthorne? And who could play Bella Harlow? I want to hear your dream cast. And rate the story from 0 to 10. It helps me shape the next ones even better. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving your time, your heart, your imagination. This channel is not just about storytelling. It is about connection. It is about the belief that love stories still matter. I cannot wait to see you in the next episode. Till then, take care of your heart. You never know when your own story might begin.